Let's get ready to throw down.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show.
It's my cat eye glasses here.
Sales Throwdown. We're doing live at lunch. So if you're watching on Facebook, thank you. If you're watching this later, thanks for tuning in. Clint is not here today, but we're going to keep going anyway. And we were kind of talking about topics and things to talk about. And I thought we'd talk about mindset around prospecting.
I'm working on special effects.
Yes, Al is working on next level video
you see
production.
outside? You can see out my ear, now out the window, or there's some. Yeah, okay.
If you've ever wondered what it's like to sell to an eye, that's it right there. Like that's it right there. So
just bring them a toy, man. They'll play with it. You can talk to them. They'll be like, wow, yeah, that's great. But hey, can you leave this? Yeah, where do I sign?
Johnny and I are constantly going, focus, bring it in.
Yeah, and that is why promotional products are what they are, right? Because you can give somebody something, I've not had a whole lot of success with that kind of thing, but, there's a whole industry around it, so other people do.
We're actually about to start a mailer with the clinics, and we've tossed around some ideas, and how gimmicky do you get in healthcare? I mean, we try not to. And you can't overpromise and underdeliver, because a lot of times when they come in, you don't know what the condition really requires, right?
Yeah.
And so you start throwing, introductory offers. I've always been against that kind of stuff, but we do want some exposure, and looking at it for like a postcard that we would send out. So if anybody's got any comments about having either some success, we've had some success in the past. I just had, with this whole, internet and social media and stuff like that, people have gotten away from sending it to the house or the home. But we're even thinking about doing business to business that way, because, people are kind of looking at their mail a little bit more these days. It's kind of locked in. So we'll see.
I think whatever it takes to gain attention, right? Because that's still marketing, right? Like that's not selling, because that's not the actual conversational part of it. So, marketing is all about generating interest and wonder, so that way people are like, hey, I might need that. Let's have a conversation about it.
Right.
And, with us being mostly salespeople, right? It's a little, there's old Clint Bigelow. Let's get old Clint Bigelow in here. More promote. Clint is joining us, everybody.
Happy days.
So yeah, until the conversation starts, it's marketing, right? There he is. Look at him.
Hey.
Man, welcome, buddy.
What's happening?
Wow.
What you guys doing here?
Just putting on a little show.
Waiting on you, man.
So still doing this, huh? That's awesome.
It didn't go down in flames last week when you weren't here. That's weird.
Oh, I figured it would.
Man, you got to change that angle, dude.
I'm slammed here. I'm trying to make up for lost time.
Okay.
I'll shut my video off for a minute and get set up.
Okay, cool.
Bear with.
Yeah, but yeah, when you're marketing, like that's generating interest and attention, so that way they can have the sales conversation with you. So
I agree, and that again, we want to put it's like a little bit of bait on a hook. We want something of interest that initiates their interaction with the clinic, and then from there we can take it. I mean, I'm telling you, my providers are all about service, my staff. So I mean, we really can come in with some answers to some healthcare problems. It's just getting them to pick us instead of the clinic down the road. Or hey, if your provider isn't available, give us a shout. You can walk in, we'll see you today kind of scenario. So, if we can create a sense of urgency, or people have a sense of urgency, we want to address that and let them know that, we're not a doc in the box per se, but we definitely want to expedite their care. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted on how well it goes or doesn't go.
Go ahead, Al.
Clint, I was just bringing Clint up to speed. We're about to do a mailer, kind of old-fashioned marketing with a little postcard. Cool. Gonna drop it in one of our clinics. One zip code has about 15,000, so we're gonna push those out the door. And I was just telling John, I was curious as if anybody even did that kind of marketing any longer. and whether, they could have any point of view like, hey, we did it, didn't work, or hey, we did. I've done it in the past, but it was probably 8 years ago, and we had some success with it. So we're going to go back that route one more time.
Yeah, we'll check the comments
I mean,
in a little bit.
I know as far as like realtors go, I see that most common in realty, I think. And I have only ever used a realtor that I've gotten a mailer from because I just happen to have their information there.
Cool.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
sure.
And dentists, like I see it in dentists and stuff like that.
And that's what sparked it. We saw some of those, and I'm like, let's get back on this. And one of the things is I view it kind of like an oil coupon. So we're going to consistently do this for probably through the end of the year, because as we go through the different seasons, we can send a different version of the same flyer. And the way I've always approached it is, you start needing an oil change. And remember, somebody was running a special, and you start looking for that color coded. Oh, I know it was yellow. So again, I think colors matter. Obviously red and yellow are the two, and black are the most visible, like as you drive by a sign or you see something on your desk. And then, like I said, and then just having some verbiage that it creates a little bit of attention, or hey, don't forget us kind of scenario.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted.
So let's catch up with Clint. What's going on in your world, buddy, in your pipeline? How's it going? You were crushing it 2 weeks ago. Still crushing?
Yeah.
most non-committal I've ever seen in my entire life.
I mean, what's crushing it? That's the key question, right?
Well, are you on pace?
No.
Okay.
COVID pace, yeah. you got to readjust your numbers, right?
That's true.
You always got to make it look good. No, I will say some different opportunities that would have never sparked had this all not happened or happening, because it forced you to go out of your environment, and some of those are coming to fruition right now. So that is it's huge for me. And,
good.
Awesome.
in my group. So
when you say huge, define huge for me. I mean,
it's not it's not money, right? It's the other thought of changing industry, vertical market stuff that you want to do when the rest of the successful portions of the year, but you can't because you're so busy on focusing on what you have, and you can't. It's really hard to tell your leadership that you're branching out when something is working, right? So it's really hard to convince people to do that. So everything's failing. So why not try something different while it's failing? And if it fails, what'd you lose?
Exactly. So, yeah. You had the time on your hands to get to it. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I get you now. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's winning big.
And that kind of prompted what we're doing to go back old school, because so many doors are closed, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's so hard to, and then our market is anybody walking down the street that's got a pair of legs and some lungs, right? I will tell you though, we are, and one of the things that I've been kind of hesitant to put out there is, man, we're seeing a lot of stressed out people. And so we're writing lots of prescriptions to calm people down, and we'll keep taking them through the door, man. We completely understand how stressful all this has been on people. And so yeah, the COVID has produced a different class of patient for us, if you will, that probably wouldn't have been there in the numbers that we're seeing had COVID not shown up.
No, I agree.
So yeah.
So we were kind of spitballing some topics and talking about some things before you got here, Clint. And one of the things that I think we should talk about is mindset about how you deal with rejection, right? Especially when you're networking and trying to lead generate and trying to network and do all these things, because the more volume you do, the more you're going to put yourself in positions to where you're going to get told no, right? So like I had 2 people today that I reached out to on different social media platforms, no pitch, just like a connection. Okay, what are you going to sell me? Maybe nothing, right? And then they're like, going into like defensive mode, right? And getting kind of agitated and irritated. And I'm just kind of like, hey, look, if it's a no, that's okay. We don't have to talk about anything. Just figured there might be some value in being connected eventually, right? If you don't want to hop on a call now, no problem. I didn't even ask.
Yeah.
So the thing that I've been thinking about today very specifically is I could take that and get really mad about it, right? About these people who have their walls up. So then that gets my walls up. And then we get to that jaded salesperson, screw that guy, screw that person and stuff, which is not helpful, right? On the other end of it, right, you can be really like shut down, right? You're carrying that weight of the no, of the ruffled feathers with you all day and stuff like that, and go hide in your hole. But that's not super helpful either. So you got to pick the middle route. And I'm curious for you, Clint, right? Because I look towards that D side of the spectrum with awe, right? Because you just don't care at all. So how do you do that stuff well? Like how do you handle rejection well and not turn it into like a pissing match?
First of all, I don't handle it all that well, to be honest with you, because I view it as a fight, right? It's instant fight versus someone with a little more compassion feels for the other side. I don't have that, so it's not so easy for me, because now once you control that and you realize that that's what you're doing, I think that's a big difference, right? That you realize it's just business, and if you view it how you would do it to somebody else, and you keep it in that business spectrum, it's okay. One thing that I would say is, and I hear this constantly, see it more or less on LinkedIn, is this, and John, you even speak this a lot. Go fail, go out there and get rejected, because the more no's you get, the more chances you're eventually going to get a yes, right? Yeah. And that is a theory. I would say, because I just happened to read a post on LinkedIn today, is, there is a time and a place to go get rejected, to get your reps in, and to not worry about it and not be embarrassed. But eventually, you got to use that as a filter to get it down to possible wins. And then you got to change your mentality to go win, right? So you can't go out there with this okay thought process of it's okay to be rejected and it's okay to get the no, right? The quote unquote no. Eventually you got to turn that into a yes, right? So use it as a filter, then shift to the win mentality. I believe in that strongly. I don't think you can stay on one side or the other all the time.
Here's Clint on a sales call. What'd you say?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
So for Nan,
fear is a motivator.
Getting us back on track. So Nan, as someone who's incredibly people oriented, like how do you deal with that rejection? I mean, does it bother you? Does it get under your feathers, or are you just kind of like, I still love you anyway, so eventually, or how do you deal with that?
Appropriate.
Here's Nan. Hug.
Hearts and minds.
The big thing is you can't control others' emotions. I mean, they are going to react however that they feel like they need to. But that doesn't mean you need to react because of the way their emotions are going. If they're going south, my gosh, I'm just like, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to think, what is the best reaction for them, for me? I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to go sideways. I think a lot of times the reason people get angry or act crazy or get depressed, just a negative emotion, is they've taken it too far. They're not really looking at the big picture, what's really going on. And in sales, whenever you're trying to talk to someone about a new product or a current product that they're using, and they're going haywire, and believe me, that happens a lot. I think if you're an I, you're just escalated all the time. Look at our I in the group, just the different, it's like magnifying glass, the knife.
Don't go there.
And if you're a D, you're just like, I think you get easily frustrated, So, and I'm not saying that to be mean, Clint, because I think you're fantastic, but I just think
like I care.
I think the big thing is don't try to control someone's emotions, and check your emotions. I think a lot of times you're just going to be unsuccessful if you can't check your emotions, because you're either going to go crazy, acting crazy, or get completely mad at someone, and it's to no avail. It's not going to. So I think is the key ingredient there.
I mean, you bring up a good point, because emotionally driven decision making is bad in any scenario. What side of the fence you're on? Happy, sad, love, hate.
Exactly.
They're all bad, right? It's something that, especially in construction, you're dealing with a lot of alpha male type personalities, and it's just you got to take the emotion out of it all the time, right? Whether it's I'm having a really good day, so who cares? Let's make this decision, or versus we're never making that decision because I hate you, right? And they're both bad, in my opinion.
They're not long term, because that immediate, yeah, I want to do it, or no, I don't want to do it. Nobody's really thought through the equation, and you're not going to move on to a bigger project.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So then I guess the question comes up of, do you think the environment's changed? And if it has, yeah, I agree with Clint, and to John's point, you're gonna find people somewhat distracted, and probably more no's are gonna come from that. So how hard do you press somebody about calling it over at this point, when every day tends to be a new day for every industry out there, right? And I mean, do you guys see people getting better or getting worse or staying the same in their approach to a sales call, meaning the client or the prospect?
Are under pressure, and I think a lot of people feel under pressure right now. This is not the time to push someone. I don't believe, because they are feeling a little angst right now. I think right now is a good time to just listen, step back a little bit. Now there comes a time where you've got to push people, because sometimes people just get stuck in their negativity, or their, things aren't going to get better, there's no way. Well, that's not true. I mean, everything always turns around. It's going to be fine, so I do think resting, again, I think listening is a really valuable tool right now to our clients.
Yeah, there's also, definition of what your no is, right? What does it mean for you to get a no? Because to me, silence, after we've had some good conversations, silence is a definite no for me, right? And I wipe it off the map. So I make the decision for you to just get rid of it, right? Do you need to take a bad relationship and worsen it by chasing them and just to get the word 2 letters put together?
Okay.
Like there's a theory there, right?
So my question for you there is, Clint, like, how do you differentiate between someone who has gone silent because it's a no, and someone who's gone silent because they're busy with other stuff, and like there's actual value in the conversation? How do you determine that?
Well, and you know me well enough, John, personally, that it is, if you need me, I'm here, right? I've given you all the information I can give you to make this decision. And if you're unable to make the decision, one, because maybe you're not the decision maker, you got to push it to a board. This is going to be a 3-month waiting list. Like, I keep you on the pipeline for a while, but if you can't even tell me that this is still moving forward, it's over, right? So that's just, in my world, that's a no to me. Like, it's over, right?
Okay.
So you get people that drag on these pipelines for 6, 7, 8 months, and they get these, they told me the other day they're still thinking about it. So that's a yes. That's a bad mentality to be in.
So I have a question though, right? Because if the whole point is to get a binary decision, right, out of the prospect, either a yes or a no, like, some people are they're not action takers by default, right? So how do you square yourself with that idea of, this kind of person just isn't going to take action right now? There seems to be some value here, but they're just dragging for some way, shape, or form. Do you push back on those kinds of things?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I do everything that I can do in the situation.
Sure.
And as long as I do that, as long as I go above and beyond, the call of duty, and get to where I'm comfortable with walking away, that, whether it's a yes or a no, that's a win for me, right? Versus pounding somebody to the pavement so hard that I force them to say no, which we do a lot in sales, right? Because that's what we've been taught in the new age of sales, is to go make sure you get the no. If it's a no, it's still a win, because now we have metrics, right? We have stuff to measure off of. And in my opinion, that works to a certain degree. What you don't want to do is further destroy a relationship by pounding somebody's head off the curb to get the no. That doesn't make any sense to me. Walk away, keep your head held high, knowing you did everything you could do, and be done with it.
Yeah,
I agree.
I would agree with that. So, Clint, I feel like I'm getting into a lot of decision maker DMs with people who are Ds, right? And so these people, I feel like, have their walls up, and they're very assertive. Like, hey, what do you got for me? What do you got for me? Right? Are you trying to sell me something? Right? Which to me comes across as like a very D thing. Like, I could see you having
I do it every
not
day.
that much patience. So
I have that same conversation every day.
so when I think about that, my normal go-to is to, hey, I'm not sure, right? Like maybe nothing,
I'm done.
but I know, right? So like I'm trying to figure out, do I challenge in some way, shape, or form? Do I like, how do I do that well with a D and not just completely blow it up just for the sake of blowing it up?
Well, first of all, have you done your homework to know that you add value? Do you know that they need you?
No.
Before you, so to me, you're fishing in the wrong pond already. Right?
Well, okay, so hold on. So all my clients these days are coaches, consultants, and agency owners, right? So my reach outs are all to coaches, consultants, and agency owners, right? To help them document their sales process, get the tech installed, and then dial it in so that way they can scale it and give it to someone else. And so I'm reaching out to only people in that network, right? But this one guy was like, "You're either trying to buy something from me or you're trying to sell me something." It was just getting like really defensive and really triggered. And
which is true, but it's true.
It is true, but like not right now though. Like, like I'm totally fine being connected with someone, and then they'll see my posts and my content and my stuff, and then eventually they're going to reach out to me. So like I'm really just trying to grow my network and honestly provide some value about the stuff that I hear about and see. So
can you not just tell them what you just told us?
I do. Right?
You can't, yeah. I
was
going to say
it comes off without any tone as just being this like canned ass line that everybody says whenever there's like a deflection.
But it didn't sound canned ass to me just now.
Because tone, right?
Yeah.
These are not verbalized conversations. So without tone, I have to find a way to like communicate this stuff in a way that is actually impactful and stops that pattern of, okay, I don't want to talk to this guy, kind of deal. And I don't know how to do that very well against a D.
Well, you gotta, and I was about to say the word ego, stroke the ego a little bit, but after our podcast on ego, I'm so confused on what that means still to this day that I wouldn't even use it. So, I mean, it really
that's a win for me.
It really threw me off. So, there is a thing with a D where you have to let him be the expert and make sure that he's in the driver's seat to be an expert. So asking questions like, what do you guys use? Why did you make that decision to use that process? Those things get the conversation rolling a little bit easier than coming off as a salesperson with that monotone, same speech that he's hearing from everybody. Because let me tell you guys, at this point, what we're talking about, everybody's trying. Right. This isn't no front page news anymore. The ABCs, always be closing mentality. I think 20 years ago was still making a shift. 10 years ago was still making a shift, but now it's pretty commonplace. So even though we say new sales tactics, they're pretty commonplace in my opinion, because I hear it from everybody. They may be wrong the way they do it. They don't have all the pieces put together, but it's still a very common tone of speech. So John, I'd say, or anybody listening out there, I think that, you just got to get the ball rolling so that you can have that candid conversation the way you just did with us. And the only way you do that is through conversation, and you got to get the ball rolling somehow.
So I think that what I'm going to start doing is I'm just going to start going with them. Right. Like, this guy was like, man, you guys are all the same, all these pitches, like, and instead of like putting up a fight or anything else like that, I'm just going to go with him. Yeah, man, absolutely. Right. I'm sure it's really, really bothersome and everything else. And that's not my goal. Right. Can I tell you what I do, and you can let me know if that's worth talking more.
I mean, that would definitely separate you because, as a matter of fact, right now, our company is trying to buy software that construction management software for our company. And, tied into that is estimating tools. It's there's always a bolt on, right? There's always, if you use that, well, you should use ours, right? So it's just constant upsells, right? And but I sit through these, conference calls or Zoom meetings with, different companies, and it's just always the same. What it comes down to is affordability. When I call the answer, right? That's huge for us. And does it have everything I need? Like that's my three big things. The sales pitch, on the other hand, is the same monotone. We have everything you need. We'll take care of you. Don't worry about us. We're the best. We're the leading in the industry. And like, God dang, how many leaders in the industry is there? Because you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so conversations like that break you apart, where it says, yeah, you're right. You know, we do, I don't know about what you're using right now, but it sounds similar to what I do or I provide. And I don't know how I can be different from them. I'm just reaching out to you to find out if I can. And then you put the ball back in their court to, you know, let them tell you. And it may not go anywhere,
Yeah,
but they
for sure.
probably don't need, you if that happens.
Yeah, and you know, I think that this is part of the misconception here of, you know, to the prospect, right? Even people who are in business, I think that this is really, really interesting. They're in business, they're selling, they have clients and everything else like this, and their walls are still up whenever someone reaches out to them, right? So then I'm like, man, if you're this triggered by receiving, you know, some kind of pitch, like, how are you actually handling your sales conversations, right? Because I believe that the way you handle one side of the coin has an impact on how you deal with the other side of the coin. So if people can't sell to you without you getting pissed off, like, what's really happening in your sales conversations?
Absolutely. And I'm very much in that boat. I'm as much, you know, on the buying side as I am in the selling side. And, you know, with these different programs, estimating softwares, and we, you know, vendors that sell sheet metal and ductwork and pipe, and, you know, the list goes on of people that are trying to sell to me, and how I buy is greatly influenced by how I try to sell, how I want to be perceived when I do it. And I try to give as much as I can a fair shot to everybody coming through the door. But I will tell you that it's a short fuse for me that you may have the best product, and this guy says he also has the best product. It's a very, very small margin of how you treat me personally and professionally that makes that decision for me. It just really does. And how you respond to what we're doing.
And we've talked about this in the past very specifically for you, that once someone shows up and makes a bold claim of like, this is the best, you go into that mode of like, no, I'll find the best. Kind of
It's a bold statement to make, right? It's like saying I have the #1 hamburger in Fort Worth. Okay, that's like art. That's a pretty relative term, right? Everybody's going to have their own opinion, so be careful on making those bold statements. I don't know that I've ever, as D as I am, I have never made the statement I'm the best contractor in the country or the state or the town or even in the immediate area. I've never said that, because I truly believe that as I drive around town and I see thousands and thousands of construction jobs going on, I would guess that there's companies out there that can do exactly what I do as well as I do it, or maybe even better, right? I live with that.
Yeah.
What I would like to do is have a good working personal relationship, and they buy from me because of customer service, quality, expertise, our prices within their budget, we finish on time, our safety records, you know, impeccable. Like those are the differences.
But I think that and to your point, Clint, is as you build trust with a client, right? Because at first, that's really what most of us are looking for when we buy into something. Because I know we do it with the clinics. We have, you know, relationships with vendor groups, and what we're looking for is trust. You know, can I trust you to do the best job you can? I know there's snafus all through every equation, and every process can go off the rails. But can I trust that you're going to call me and we're going to figure out a plan to put it back where it needs to be?
Sure.
And there's the give and take in the process after the yes has been thrown out there and you decide you're going to do business. But as you decide to do business, that's not the end of the story. The story continues. That's just the first chapter of how things get done and how the project's completed. And then, you know, the discussion of ongoing business after that. And we fired vendors. We do it pretty regularly, because if you don't muster up, because, you know, we get the medical sales guys and we do the same thing. Hey, we got this. We're on all these plans. We do this, we do that. And we get stuff kicked back all the time that I'm like, wait a second, you said you had, you know, over promise and under deliver. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, that trust starts to get eroded, because I give you 100 points. I don't make you prove anything. Yeah. It just came out of your mouth. I assume that's the truth of the equation. And as it starts to chip away, you just received a D. Now you're on your way to an F report card this 6 weeks. Well, screw you. We're not dealing with F companies, right?
I totally agree with that. I face that a lot, in the sense that, like, when vendors come to me and they want to sell me, they screw up. I don't care about your screw up, right? I care about how we got out of the situation. And I think any
Exactly.
good business partner, and I say partner pretty sternly, because your customers also should think that way about you. And if
Yeah.
they dump you because of one mistake, we're all allowed them, right? It happens. It's life.
Mhm.
And if your customers dump you on that, the real question in your head shouldn't be, oh, what do I do now? It's, should I even have been in bed with this person to begin with? That's where my mind goes, right? And
Right.
I'm to be honest with you, we can do business with a ton of different people out there. I think who you choose and who you partner with makes you or breaks you, but
Agreed.
you choose.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, I think what happens is, and you earn your money when you solve problems, and those problems may be ones you created, but you own them, you address them, you enlighten the group that you're working with about how you're going to fix them, time frames, and then you stick to a plan of getting that handled, whatever problem may come down the road.
Yeah, I think we're diving off on the operations side of things a little bit here, but this also can go to a sales conversation of when you do make a mistake, when you told them it was $10,000 and it's actually costing you 12, and you need to go get that $2,000 because it's paying your payroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a mistake in sales. And how you have that conversation with people, one, you should have the conversation, right? You shouldn't just eat it. There's always a conversation to be had around business, and
Mm-hmm.
owning that mistake, and then having an after action report, just like you would if there was a car crash with, you have an after action report of how did this happen? Why did this happen? What could I have done differently? Right.
Sure.
Having that, whether it's in operations or sales, is huge for your own mentality, but also for your customer to know that, we're going to do this different together next time. So
I agree.
Yeah. Nan, what are your thoughts on this? You're being awfully quiet over there.
I felt like I was talking a lot. I just think people are influenced by your actions. So I think it's really important that you're constantly checking. What are you doing? Are you again listening? Are you making sure? I think communication, another thing. Right now, I'm not being so concerned with the deal as much as keeping your line of communication open with your clients. I think it's, I'm thinking, be it a patient or a client. I think, with Al, that's why I think these mailers are really good for him. I think what Clint's talking about with his clients, I think it's really important just keeping communication open.
So for
Well,
Clint, sorry, I'll go ahead.
Well, what communication does, it presents you with opportunities, because the more conversations you have with existing business or people that are, one step removed from what you're currently doing, then opportunities start to knock on your door. That gets the juices flowing of, oh, we could go over and do this project, or why aren't we working with that group? And then that group, and there's where your prospecting can really come into play in my business is, what are you guys doing? Well, who else do you guys work with? Is there a connection that we can make with that group? Or would you mind an introduction? I'd like to know those guys. And there's where you end up, and I think the word influencer is overused, but that's what works for me, right? Mm-hmm. Is that my name gets thrown around the block, hopefully in a real positive way, for either having done business with me or me doing business with you, whether I'm on the sale or the buy side. And because they're out in the same industry, it's healthcare. And you're always chasing the money in your industry. Don't ever forget that. And that's how dynamics change. Like Clint said, that they're on different projects they probably wouldn't be on, but there's still a relationship to the old way they were doing things and the old people that they knew, right, Clint?
Yep,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So again, I mean, you're gonna have to get creative. You're gonna have to stay connected, and you're gonna have to work through the edginess of the changes that we're currently going through.
Yeah.
Did you get, Clint, you said that you get pitched pretty regularly. Did you get a good or bad pitch this week or last week? Anything that sticks out?
I feel like, let's go to the last 6 years because the pitch is constantly the same with these I'll say management software type people. The pitch is constantly the same. Nobody else is doing this. We're the first. Like, look, man, you got to understand you got to know your crowd, because I've done my research much like you would, John, where, not as much as you, but I have done enough to have just enough knowledge that this conversation we're about to have is, I'm going to have an intelligent input to something. And what you're saying that nobody else does, that person also does. And now you're a liar. And you didn't have to say it at all. You didn't even have to say it. You just say, we do this versus we do this the best. Very different in my mind.
Well, and I think that goes down to the idea that most people treat like sales training as just like product training, product and, features and benefits. And here's the things, here are your talking points, and marketing has done this thing, so go out and get it, right? And then you're just drinking that Kool-Aid so hard that because it's easier to pitch, right? It's easier to show up and say, okay, cool, here's what I do. We've been around for this long, everything else like this. What do you think, right? Because you can do that. And then when they say no, thank you, be like, well, I tried, right? Well, trying doesn't get the deal done, right? You got to be able to go through that process and then figure out like, okay, why didn't it work? How can I adjust? What needs to happen now? So that way that doesn't happen again. Because if you're constantly running up against like the same like 2 or 3 things, like that's just bad planning.
Yeah. And I constantly, in my mind, when I start talking to somebody about a new job, I have 5 questions in my head, and I want you to hit 3 out of the 5 for it to go forward, right? That's just kind of my first filter. And if you don't hit 3 out of those 5, then I think we should probably just stop talking about it, because it's not a real deal, right? And those questions float and change every time. But what those 5 questions come from is a pool of 20 questions that we've generated in sales training, right? But I'm not running through the list of every 20 every time with every customer, because they're not the same person. It's not the same project.
Sure, absolutely.
And so I think you gotta float a little bit. And the other side of that too is if you stick to the book every single time, I don't know that you'll ever get when you win one, it'll be perfect. It'll be the best job you ever did. But those are going to be so few and far between. I don't know that you'll eat dinner tonight. You know what I mean? You're not going to have food on the table. So I think you got to be careful about what you set your limits to. It's guidelines. It's rules and guidelines that are great to follow, but you got to adapt.
And Clint, I think an important thing here is when these conversations or your sales process starts to break down, and they periodically do, rather, you get this far with this client, you get a little bit further down the road, and you're seeing these things fall apart. You got to bring that back internally and say, what could I have done differently?
Sure.
Just like John was going through his pitch, and maybe it's tonality, and for a C, I could see where tonality is a tough sticking point, right? I mean, you're analytical, so trying to wrap some emotion around numbers and in the process can be kind of tough to say, hey, this is really cool, when no, it's just do this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that we all, as we as the economy starts to open back up, we've got to realize that, our tone needs to be right. We need to be empathetic if that's necessary. We need to be strong when we need to be strong. And I'm putting emotions to things, because sometimes when you say, it's $12,000 versus $10,000, I mean, that's going to take a little bit of courage, right? And you're going to have to be tactful. And if that blows it up, the next time you got to figure out how that process doesn't go south over $2,000, right?
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Because I'm working with a client right now, and we're coming up with those questions, right? Those questions to ask to get deeper into the conversations. And we were going through and we're grouping them based upon the target market, right? Because this guy, he does leads for real estate, realtors, agents, and brokers. And so we went through a process of figuring out like, hey, where are people going to be? So what questions are going to make the most sense? And so we went through a process and figured out, okay, his clients are either going to have worked with someone who has generated leads for them in the past, and there might be pain points around those things, But the pain points around people that have never used an agency or lead generation service are going to be completely different. So let's make the pains relevant to the individual person. And so that's where you start actually forming out, you know, your process and your flows and things like this. Because if your first question is like, you know, hey, Clint, I'm curious, you know, have you guys worked with an agency in the past? And they say, yes, okay, cool. Like that should then alleviate all my questions that I normally ask someone who doesn't have that experience. And the same thing also applies. You can't ask the same questions to everybody and get the same outcome because everybody's in a different spot. And that's where the soft skill set comes in, right? How well can you pivot? How prepared are you?
Sure. And I think that's, you know, kind of going back a few minutes, like to that list of questions, right? How you, because they may already be pre-qualified 1 through 7, right? And you can skip to 8 because you asked, hey, where do you put your money? Well, I put it in a bank. Okay. So that tells me you got experience with a banker of some sort, a teller, you know, you have some money, you know, saving experience. I don't need to ask all the 15 questions to ruin this conversation right off the bat.
And that's where, like, because like I have this idea that the second question is more important than the first question anyway, right? So, you know, if I, you know, using the banker deal, like, hey, you know, how do you manage your money now? Well, it's in a bank. Okay, cool. How's that working? The how's that working question is significantly more important than like, where do you put your money and how do you manage your money? But you got to ask that question in a way that gets engagement before you can ask the actual hard question.
Yeah. Does the money work for you?
Yeah.
No, it sits there. Okay. Yeah. Do you want it to work for you? You know, like there's just so many ways to not go through your checklist and create it on the fly because they're allowing you to, that you have to know the book so well that you can change and deviate from it as you have a conversation. You can't go through it scripted because that's what most people do. And I'm telling you right now, I can spot it 1,000 yards away.
Yeah.
But you can put an algorithm together that allows you to do if it's yes, we go down this pathway. If we do no. Yeah. So don't be afraid to line it out.
Yeah. And Doc, to me, that is the book to me, right? Mm-hmm. Like the algorithm is the book. And it just, there's different formulas within there that you can get the same answer. And I think if you don't adapt and you're just constant monotone and you're always only going for the no because the book said go for the no, there's a mentality shift there, and personalities play into how you do.
Huge. Yeah.
You know, the algorithm into this, whether not just disc but mood, right? Mm-hmm. How are you feeling today? You're pissed off because somebody cuts you off and you hop on a sales call. That's a whole different sales call than you just listen to, you know, James Taylor, Fire and Rain, and now all of a sudden you're in a good mood.
What a song choice! Like, would never have expected you to pick that song as the song that you listen to get pumped up to.
I'm a hidden James Taylor fan.
Is anybody not like? Is there anybody on the planet who's like, man, James Taylor sucks?
I think my dad was, and if I asked him that question, I'd be like, oh yeah, you know what? He actually had some good music. I just hated him because he was a hippie.
I actually saw James Taylor at the Bronco Bowl over in Dallas.
Bronco Bowl, man. That was a long time ago. I've been to
man. It was dead cool, man. It was really a good show. Yeah, he's a cool cat.
So, you know, the mood thing is super important, you know, and to that idea, right? The tonality and your pausing and, you know, your confidence, right? All that comes across on a nonverbal level, right? And so when you're social selling and DMing and doing all these things, like, you don't get to control the tone, right? So that's why the goal is to get to a call, because if we're on a call, you don't get to inject your tone based upon your day anymore, right? Or not as much. I mean, you can take things offensively if you want to, but that's a decision you make. So whereas like in text, email, DM, you know, all of these things, you have to deal with their interpretation of that tone right then, and they're not actually held hostage to the idea that they have to give you an answer right now. So they can go off and think about it and then come back, and in a conversation, you actually get into the gist of it, right? Into like what is like the flow of the conversation. So that's why the phone call or the conversation is still so important, in my opinion.
Yeah. To be honest with you, when I saw emojis everywhere, like even in professional emails, I started seeing them come out. I hated it at first because it was just so unprofessional in my mind because I was taught the other way. that you don't do that stuff. But now that we're so text driven in this day and age with emails and text and different things and on LinkedIn messages and stuff, that I actually appreciate a few emojis because I know where your head's at, right?
Yeah.
A little smiley face or a little crying, laughing face or whatever. To be honest with you, I don't hate it anymore.
Yes.
I hated it for a long time. And I fought it. And, people were telling me that if I put emojis in my content on LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that, it would perform better. And I was kind of like, man, no, I don't want to do that. But it's a really nice way of injecting tone, right? And having control over the tone.
Well, John, just create your avatar and get going, man.
Yeah.
It's already going. I just need to maybe add more emojis.
Well, you hit on something, John, that I'd like to talk about because who are we listening to when people tell us that's unprofessional? Don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Pick who you're listening to, because if you truly look at what they do, and they're a struggling sales guy, well, why would I listen to that guy?
Exactly.
Now if he's got an 87% hit ratio and he's just killing it in this market and everybody knows who he is and everybody loves him, I'm probably going to listen to what that guy has to say.
Yeah.
Right. When the guy calls you and he says, "Hey, I only got a second because the jet's about to take off."
Exactly.
The private one, stop that shit, and he hangs up on you. Yeah, listen to that guy. That's the dude to listen to.
Can you just send me the Cliff Notes? I don't want to read the whole book, but
yeah, exactly. Let me follow you for a day. Hey,
Well, sorry, I'll go ahead.
And I was going to say, if you're questioning, because we've kind of probably brought up a lot of questions in people's minds about whether they're doing it right or whether they're not. One of those things is to reach out and find some mentorship, right? Somebody who is, in your opinion, doing it well in your industry, and make some connections there in the sense of, hey, I'm struggling a little bit here, or I've come up across a lot of no's. I was doing so well beforehand. And, I day traded for a year and had about a 28% return on trading. I went to a trading class, spent a whole week, and I came out a worse trader, right? And so I called some of my buddies, and they're like, no, yes, no, kind of ran them through some of the things that I was trying to do a little bit differently. And what had happened was a lot of my mojo and my own intuition relative to those but I reached out to some guys that were crushing it as well and doing well. So yeah, if you've stepped in it, own it, man. Reverse the clock. Go call some of your partners, that should be in the industry, and let them give you the pep talk and the work through to get to the other side of a bad decision on your side of the fence.
When you said you came out a worse trader, literally you just described most sales training.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I completely get that too. Yeah.
Because you have to unlearn, right?
You lost yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You became a robot.
And here's what happened to you, because we did this, and Nan can attest to this. So what you got was some guy that had done okay in sales, got tired of knocking on the doors, but had a decent record, and then went and told you how he did it, right? Yep. Here's your product. And like I had one guy, I don't call doctors, I call them by their first name. Well, you know how much shit you can blow up calling a doctor John when you walk through the door like you own his world? He's like, never, ever let that jackass in my office in.
Because
they're
What's
thinking,
that?
I said, even if they don't say to your face,
exactly,
then they're still thinking it. Like,
no, they tell their front office person never to let you back again.
Sure.
Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah. And that's another kind of like nuanced area, right? Because like you got to upset the pattern. You want to make sure that you're not putting them on a pedestal above you and then having to talk up to them and do all these things that we talk about and are knowing important. But like you can go too far, right? So, and you don't know how far that line is until you hit it, and then you say, oh, okay, a little too far. Let's back off on that a little bit, right? And then you dial it back in, but. We saw, Al and I would see this all the time in the martial arts school, right? These people would come in and they would have 4 or 5 years of training in another art, and they had to unlearn all of that stuff, right? So while they could probably handle themselves, they can't handle themselves like using this methodology and this style and this art. And that's okay because you're new, but anytime you're doing like a big change, you have to unlearn stuff, right? I mean, it's kind of like when you go to the military, right? I mean, a boot camp is really all about upsetting your patterns and breaking you all the way down, so that way you can come out of it in the mold that they need you, right? Sales is kind of the same way, I think.
Well, and so as you're talking about that, instantly in my head, you said military, but I think shooting instruction, right? I was a shooting instructor in the Marine Corps, and it's like the guys that were from Kentucky that, you know, you would think, oh, these guys are going to kill it. You know, these guys are not the guys that are my top shots at the end of the day. It's the guys that know absolutely nothing, right? And they're learning fresh. So to your point, you know, telling a guy that's 20 years old that has shot since he's 3 years old and his grandpa taught his dad that taught him, right, this certain way, doesn't mean it was right? Or perfect or better than good, right? They might be good in their arena, like you're saying with the martial arts, but you know, I need you to be at this level. What you've been doing your whole life is here. And I can't teach you to keep doing what you're doing to get you to the next level.
Hey, Clint,
I have to do some different things.
When they told me that I was a horrible shot, I just said, look, I don't want to kill anybody. I just want them to keep their heads down.
Yeah. And it's so funny. It's so funny because if somebody would have told me that, it would have been the end of my world. I would have felt terrible.
Son, you got the wrong branch.
Yeah.
That's what he would have said to him.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, are there potatoes I can peel? Do you have a coffee maker that doesn't work? I'm an electrician, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm curious if you guys have opinions on this, right? How much of selling is like the nuance of figuring it out and making it fit for yourself, and how much of it is the methodology that you follow, whether it's, you know, Spin or Sandler or Herman Miller or, you know, Carnegie or John Maxwell or any one of these other like methodologies that are super well known and developed. What do you think the percentage is? Like do you think it's like 50-50? Do you think it's 70-30?
No, I don't. So here's what I would say. If you dropped a golf ball on the ground and I handed you a 9-iron, at some point everybody would hit the golf ball in completely different ways, right? And we could take 1,000 golf instructions, right, to get us there. Some guys are going to excel with that golf instruction. Some people just don't have the natural ability, and some people don't have the want to be there, right? So even though the instructors taught Tiger Woods and, you know, Bubba Watson and all these guys, and he's world renowned, doesn't make it right for the person that you're teaching today, right? So I think it's a combination. I think it floats from 99% to 0% on how much training you actually use. But it's all you. It's all personally based. I look at it myself as a complete guideline book. These are some cool things. I like that. I don't like that. I would never do that, but I'd love to do that. I need to change this by using that. It's a huge all across the board for me. And nobody's perfect, right? And nobody's right. Just like your investment strategy guy, Doc, that if you're so good at this, why are you teaching this class? I mean, that's a question in my head. And it's a valid question. Some people love to teach. That's your passion in life. But some people failed, but they knew enough to talk in front of people, or they're comfortable doing it. So that's their new career path, right? So,
right.
I mean, there's so many different things, and I think you got to filter out all the stuff and make it your own. You know, a guy told me one time, is like, Clint, I could teach you 50 ways that I do it, but I know that you're going to take about 3 things of what I say, but you're going to be better for it because you're just going to learn off what I did and my mistakes.
You know, Tony Robbins says that, you know, he did a lot of, you know, seminars and things like that in the very beginning. And one of the key points he said is, I was really just looking for one nugget out of everything that I tried to do, so that I could put it in my bag and it really sort of fit me, you know, what I was doing and how I was doing things already. And I think that's where we sometimes we disrupt our own success way too much, thinking that we just found the golden nugget. Well, your bag should be full of golden nuggets, right? Mm-hmm. Things that you use, things that people have said to you that work for them, that kind of fit who you are, right? And there's where as time goes by, right? As time goes by, in a decade, you should be better than you were 10 years prior. Mm-hmm. And I go back to this. If you should be good in 5 years and great in 10, because it takes time. And if you're not good in 5, don't think you're going to get any better over the next 5 years. You're just walking a path. and it's going to become a rut over time if you're not careful.
And I'll give you a good example of something that I've learned in the last 5 years that I've completely changed as I use it is DISC. We talk about it on here all the time, personality, right? In the beginning, I learned about it and it was an aha moment for me, and I wanted to learn as much as I could about it, and I went after it. And then I started telling people that I knew what they were thinking, right? Or how they were doing it, because it was so exciting for me. And now, years later of using it every day, now I use it silently, and it's the best tool that I have in my toolbox, right? I don't tell them that, oh, you're reacting this way because you're a D. I don't even mention the words anymore. I use it internally to filter how I do things. But that's a huge graduation from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago when I first heard about it, right? And so sales training to me, and what you pick and choose out of books, articles, is the same thing, right? You're developing that pattern to silently use it down the road.
I think it's really important to know basically what everyone has stated is that you need to know yourself first, have confidence in yourself, and then you need to know your audience, and that's what I feel like DISC is all about. But if you don't know who you are and you don't know who your audience is, you're not going to be successful.
But more importantly, when you start analyzing DISC, you learn how your personality interacts with all four, the three other squares that I don't live in, right? Yep. And how I approach, John versus Clint versus Nan. Every one of those I have an Achilles heel with each one of those, right? That can hamstring me if I'm not self-aware to stay out of the pitfalls of being an I and going too long. All the pitfalls that I's have. Own that. Don't try to change it. It's just who you are.
Sure.
But learn to shut up. Learn to let them talk. That kind of stuff.
Like when we were talking about texting, I was thinking that's really a great example. Being mindful of how you text other people. My best friend is a VP for American Airlines. She hates all of the hearts, and whenever I text her, I just leave those out because I know she doesn't like it, and I know she loves me. I love her. It's great, but I'm not going to do that. Now, the same thing with a client. If I'm texting Clint, I'm telling you right now, he's getting all kinds of hearts and stuff.
I was gonna say, you can't go short on Clint, man. He just gave up his man card with his emoji, All you construction workers out there, remember, Clint likes the emojis.
Yeah. If you have Clint's phone number, text him right now with just emojis.
I want him calling me up and telling me to F off because I just made that statement.
And Clint's number.
Yeah.
Know your audience.
You know how many phone numbers I'm going to be blocking today?
Are there that many people that actually know your phone number?
Hey, I know his phone number. He's going to get an emoji every day for me for the next 30 days.
I think of you as like the real life Ron Swanson, right? Like no one's got your phone number. No one knows where you live. Like you're like this mythical creature who's like off the grid the majority of the time, and you build like ridiculously cool tables. That's
the best compliment you've ever given me.
That's right. Would it make sense to have a conversation about your CRM? Just kidding.
No. No. Hey, no, because I have the best guy ever.
Of course you do.
Of course you do.
They're all lined up outside your door waiting to talk to you.
That's fantastic. It probably makes really good sense not to talk to me then.
Agreed. Bye.
See ya. All right, guys. So we're at time. It's 1 o'clock. So if you've been tuning in, do we have anything on Facebook? Okay, so no comments today. That's all right. We are planning on a return back to the studio, and so that will change how this works, and we'll keep you guys in the loop about what that looks like and how it works. But if you are struggling with sales due to COVID or due to being new or due to just not knowing who you are, reach out to us. We can get you one of these assessments DISC at salesthrowdown.com. We've had some people reaching out. We've got some social proof of some people that have done it recently and they've gotten good results from it. If you want Clint to go over your DISC assessment, you don't really, but if you do, you can ask for that.
If you can handle that kind of honesty,
exactly.
If you want somebody to lie to you, call me. I'll take it. Great.
So if you want to
make you feel good.
If you want to take the assessment and you want to pick the person who goes over it with you, awesome. Like we love that, right? Because it's going to be more impactful if you hear it from someone who you're already in line with, right? So if you're hearing Al and you're like, man, I'm just like that, you know, you're not going to really enjoy the consult if I give it to you, you know, and vice versa. So, you know, I think I'm pretty good at breaking these things down, but you know, if you know, I mean, Clint's my guy, right? Like I want that from Clint. Like, let us know. We can do a consult with Clint and put you into Zoom, and you go over it and you learn some stuff, and you and Clint can call each other names, right? If you want to do that with Al, share stories with me and facts and Nanette and just love and happiness and compassion, come get it. Like that's why we're here.
If you can't afford a new puppy and you need some love, call Nan.
Holy cow. That's a great ending note right there, man.
That's
Boom,
right.
drop it. It's hot.
We're going to leave it right there. We'll see you guys next week. Follow us on social media, share this, like and subscribe. That's how we continue moving this thing forward. So we'll see you guys soon.
Be safe.